Hello, and welcome to our edition of Living in Charge. It's March 16th, 2021, and we are in the shadow month. I think we're calling it the shadow within. I don't even know. I don't have that in front of me. It's so terrible.
Just
Uh,
dark. It's just
I'm
dark.
it's so fluid. Everything is so fluid. And so I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about walk through the process a little bit into kind of like a three-step, and then um, break it down a little bit because what happens is we're doing all of this talking about shadow work, and it's kind of like a buzzword, and there's a lot of there's a lot of, if you're into any kind of a spiritual awareness and you're looking for things out there, you kind of come around it a lot, and it's discussions about shadow work and do this journal and all these different things that are out there. And so I wanted to kind of break that down a little bit into like how that looks and how that manifests in your life and ways that you can incorporate this, because shadow work is not something that you just do one time and then you're done. You're like, okay, cool, I've checked off shadow work and I'm on to the next thing. It's the journey of your life, and the shadowy stuff is always there. It's not always prevalent, and some of it is obviously darker than others. So there's shades of gray, if you will, in all of your shadow.
Yep.
So I think it's understanding how that journey works and being able to first and foremost have an awareness of how that's coming in, and then from there being mindful, once you have that awareness, being mindful of what you need to do at that point, and then putting an action step into place to actually work through those. And sometimes that action step can be no. So I kind of want to break that down and talk through that process a little bit, and kind of and just explore it a little bit more and summarize some action steps at the end. The reason that I kind of felt like this was something that I really want to address today, because I changed this as I often do. I change the subject up when it gets to it, because I want it to be, it comes intuitively, so I want it to be relevant. So the last, I don't know, probably 3 days, more so the last couple days, have been a lot of slowing down and a lot of, butting up against something. And for me, a lot of it was technology driven. There's a lot of, I'm either not getting an answer that I need, or something isn't working right. It's like this battle that's kind of happening all the way through. And so with that, I started to be more aware myself, of what was going on. And I was actually kind of pushing through it at first. And then I was like, hey, wait a minute, right? Because this is what we do. We think everything is just something that we're going to barrel through, or we just stop and we're frozen by it. And we don't know what to do, how to get through it. So starting at the beginning, that awareness. So for using that example for me, I was feeling it. My normal process as I go through the days is to be mindful as I'm going through those days. I get caught up in everything and roll with my emotions and that kind of thing. But in general, I tend to be more, much more than I used to be, more like letting things roll off and, just not allowing myself to be emotionally affected by everything that's going on around me, which is a process that's taken me a really long time to work through, because I'm the Cancer moon, so very emotional in general, and especially in my shadow parts. So when I started to notice that my tension level was going up and my stress level, and I was starting to hold myself differently and all of that. So I had that awareness that this was happening, and I kind of put the brakes on it for a minute, and I stepped back. Okay, what's going on? Why is this causing so much stress? What am I doing differently? And changing what I was doing, and then putting some steps in place to get through those particular things. So there's a process for this, and this is all coming from the shadow, because not only was it stuff that was going on, but it was this is the parts of me that is supposed to come easy. I'm really good with technology. I'm, despite my artistic tendencies and everything else, in my, I'll use business terms for lack of a better word, but in the way that I do things, I'm pretty organized. And I have, pretty specific systems and things like that. And those things were not working out. So, which goes back to, if you watched any of our last discussion, we talked a little bit about control, and that being particularly one of my things, where I like to either be in control or know that there is control. I don't need to be in the control, but I need to trust that somebody else is in control of what's going on. And so it was a little bit of that shadowy stuff that kind of got brought back up when those things weren't working out. I was like, okay, what's happening? Because this is something I can normally rely on easily, and I couldn't. And so I did put immediate things into place for that. But then that's just a small part of it. The immediate, what you do right then to work through those particular issues is a different thing than what's bringing all this up. Why is this so important? That's the deeper shadow work. So it's layers of shadow work. And so that's kind of where I wanted to take this discussion today. And we can use that example or anything else, but I kind of wanted to take this discussion and break that down through all those levels. Before I start doing any of that, did you want to add anything in based on what I just kind of went over?
No, if you want to use that as an example, we can pick through it a little bit. I kind of mirrored some of that, just a lot of chaos in my world.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't feeling it in the same way you were describing for yourself, but I'm feeling it in terms of just stress, and I'm forgetting things, and appointments are blending together in a way that I'm just not getting breaks. I'm missing meals. Like, it's a lot of things of that kind of stress. So that just tells me there's something out of balance. And I'm also a little bit nervous. I've got a surgery coming up at the end of the week to have my eardrum repaired. So it's like getting everything done, plus being nervous about that. I don't know what to expect. And I guess I'm not handling things as smoothly, and that's upsetting me because I do have a little bit of control too in my world. So this is a good one. Control is a good one.
Yeah, I feel like it's like the heavier rock versus the little tiny pebbles. The little tiny pebbles are just like the stuff that's getting you through your day, but that heavier rock is that issue of control of all of the things, and that not going well. And you talk about some of those things I've experienced as well. I mean, we were a few minutes late getting started today because apparently the clocks changed in the midst of all of my other stuff that was going on. And I normally just rely on my phone to tell me what's going on, but I had the phone away and I was doing other things to prep and everything else. And and then every clock around me had not been changed yet, because it was, I'm sitting in a location where there's a stove. And so I didn't notice that clock. So yes, it's very similar. So it's noticing the little things. So how do you notice that? So let's break that down a little bit. So for me, the awareness was three-pronged, and I'm sure there's other ways to do this, but so for me, it was a feeling. And I don't mean just the intuitive side, but I mean just the physically feeling. Like, I could physically feel my stress level. I was vibrating at a different frequency. I was vibrating much lower frequency than I normally do. And so I could feel that I was off. I could feel that I wasn't aligned. I don't know if it's pure chakra energy that I'm feeling when that happens, but I definitely feel off, and I start to, twist a little bit more, and, the physical parts of my body start to ail a little bit more. And I start to question, like, what's going on? Why is this, I should be fine, whatever. And so I'm actually feeling it. And then, so that kind of rolls into noticing differences. So it's noticing differences in this particular moment, in this particular day, and how this is going versus the day before. And I wasn't feeling this way. What are the differences between those two? And I know sometimes we're moving fast and there's a lot going on, and we don't have time to just stop and like list out all the differences. But if you can do that fairly quickly in your head and just have an awareness of this is different than yesterday. If you start from that very basic premise, this is different than yesterday, then you can start to unpack that a little bit kind of as you're going, and you'll almost subconsciously do that as you're kind of working through this. And then the last one is kind of flows into all of this, but it's the actual struggle. So something is different, you're actually struggling with something. It could be emotional struggle, it could be a mental struggle, it could be both, you could have it be spiritual struggle, but there's a struggle that is happening, in this moment. So it's, what is that struggle? And why do I care so much about this struggle right now? Like, what is going on? And then you can start to unpack that a little bit. So that whole awareness is really the most critical part of this whole step, because that's what happens. What happens when you don't have that original awareness, when you don't catch it, so to speak, that is building upon itself exponentially. So as this goes on, it may be 1 minute it's happening, and then it's 20 minutes it's happening, and then it's a whole day, and then it's another day, and then it's a week, and then it's a month, and before you know it, you're in this cycle of just onward stress and over and over and over and over again. And you don't know where it started, how it started, or what's causing it. And there's so many different layers of that stress that now you have to unpack each little one. So having that awareness at the beginning where you can say, okay, I see that something is happening. I don't quite get all of it. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's causing me to yell. It's causing me to be frustrated. It's causing me to sigh more. It's causing me to be more tired. I want to lay down and have a nap, whatever, some of those things. Just noticing that that's happening, that's your first clue. So if you can stop that and say, okay, something's going on, then you can start moving through those other ones. Did you want to add anything on the awareness portion of it?
I was just thinking as you were talking, your body's designed to talk to you all the time. So it doesn't surprise me that you're going to notice feelings first, because you're such a passionate, feeling oriented person. So that's going to come up in your radar big, or at least big enough to override what the other situational things are that are going on. So like the technology was like the frustration, but you immediately went from that to the feeling because that's how you're oriented. And for me in this situation, normally I'm a feeling person, but I've been feeling this whole thing more physically. Like I have the shakes as though I've had way too much caffeine and I haven't had any at all. So I'm getting a more of a physical reaction this time. So for me, that's a little bit different. It's sort of a mindfulness thing. So the more you can just get to know yourself a little bit and feel confident that your body's going to tell you when it's really out of whack. And you may miss it. We miss these things at first. But you'll get information kind of intuitively first. That's the subtle stuff. That's the quieter voice in your head. But we may not pay attention to that. And so when that happens, it's going to kick up emotions, and then that's going to speak a little bit louder. And if we choose to ignore those, then your body's going to kick up and it's going to become a physical, something. So you're always going to get those signals. So I don't want you to feel nervous that you're going to miss something important, because your body's going to tell you. But the further down the line it goes, the more layers that you have to kind of, so you'll still get there. Don't worry. It's just, how fast or slow do you want to go?
Yeah. Well, and this is a good time to also point out that, this is a lifelong journey. Shadow work is not something that you do in a hot minute. It's something that happens in your entire existence of being a human. That's what you're working through. It's all of those things that you're working through. And some of it is, the emotional stuff. Some of it is actual environmental, there's all these different things that are happening, but it's not like you're going to wake up one day and go, all right, I'm done. Like, it doesn't happen. So part of the awareness is understanding that you're always going to have something. It's not something you can check off on your list. You're not like, okay, cool, I've worked on this, I'm done, and you check it off. It's giving yourself grace to go through this whole entire process that you need to go through however long it takes you, it's just part of your journey. So everything that you're doing that stuff along the way um, is just part of the process. It's not, it's not a completion. So you mentioned mindfulness because that's the next level that I'm going in. So it's, you have the awareness, but then it's the mindfulness of what you do with that awareness. So you now understand that there's a whole bunch of stuff that's happening and it's building up, and your stress level is going, or you're getting super sad, or whatever that thing is happening in your body. Having the mindfulness to be able to, even if you don't have a ton of time, even taking 60 seconds can make a huge difference in how you then go through the rest of that day. And it might be you take 60 seconds now, and another hour it's built up and you have to take another 60 seconds. It might be that you have to go through your day and do the have tos. And then at some point you're going to have a minute and you'll be able to settle in and you'll be able to do those things. So some of those mindful moments is just, you've heard the count backwards from 10 if you're really upset about something, and I like to kind of redirect. So if you're working on all of this stuff over here and it's causing you all this stress, for 60 seconds, get completely away from that. I'm a big believer in getting out of your workspace. If you work in an environment for a long stretch of time, 6-hour day, 8-hour day, if you're at home working remotely, that your environment is home, get out of there while you're having whatever meal you're having. And sometimes you're shoving that meal down, and I understand there's a need for that on occasion, but the longer you can stretch and give yourself those actual times of slowdown and do that away from your environment, if you can redirect, you're going to redirect your entire body, mind, body, and spirit. So that's going to allow you to then get out of that emotion of whatever it was you were there, but only if you can really be mindful about it and put yourself completely in that moment. And I like to use the phrase, I guess, I don't know, that you only have the moment you are in. Nothing else is guaranteed. There is no before, there is no after, nothing. This moment that you are in is it. It's the only one you have 100% guarantee of being in. And the area that you are and what you can see and what you can feel and what you can notice in that space that you're in, that's it. So if you can, I'm really big on immersion. If you can immerse yourself in that space and be mindful and look for things. And if it's a stressful space and you can't get out of it, then really get down into it and look for something that will make you smile. Look for something that's going to take you out of that stress for a moment to be mindful of. That can be having a picture on your phone of, a place that you enjoy visiting. It can be there's a window outside with a tree and you just focus it in. You just bring it in. So it's that mindfulness, that intention, and the intention is the big word, the intention of bringing yourself narrowly focused into whatever it is that you're doing and immersing into that thing. That's going to make a huge difference. And then you can add in this, the slow breathing and doing, a few deep meditative breaths. You can add in counting down. You can add in making a short list. You can add in a bunch of the tools and techniques, a lot of which is in the class site. You can make time for those things and start those things, but not until you have brought yourself into that moment and allowed yourself to escape that one thing that you're in, or to dive into what you're in, depending on what your situation is. And then you go into, starting to question, then you can go into the specifics of why you're in this moment or need to be in this moment in the first place, and start questioning and start unpacking and start looking at why is this so stressful to me. So for example, with me, with the technology aspect of it, I'm like I literally said out loud, what is going on right now? Just stop all the things. What is going on right now? And then I started questioning, what can I do differently? Do I need to do this right now? Can I switch and do something else and come back to this later? How do I need to approach this so that it is not causing me this much stress? Clearly, there's a reason that this is happening. So forcing yourself through it and keep batting against that wall is almost always not the best solution. You want to flow with ease into your day. You want to flow with ease into what's coming. So if you've got something that's you're hitting a wall against, there's a reason you're hitting a wall. Stop, look at it, see what adjustments you can make, and then move through it. And
Which
sometimes
might be
there's emotional walls.
right. Which might be a struggle sometimes to even know what that is. So in that quiet, most of our emotions are triggered by needs that we haven't met yet. You know, we get hungry when we need to eat, and we get emotional when things are out of balance. So if you can ask yourself, what do I need right now? Sometimes it is something very physical and I need to take a deep breath, or, you know, I need to relax my body in some way, but sometimes it's an emotional need. But until you ask, it's not gonna, that process of allowing that information to surface isn't going to happen. So even if that's the best you can do in that minute of time that you have is to ask the question, at least you've started the process, and then your body is going to follow through and keep giving you signals. So if you're not clear, they're going to repeat itself. So until you get it. So.
Just I keep bumping against that wall. It'll keep happening.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So and that's a simple questioning list. That's a very simple list. Don't overcomplicate it. What do I need? What is going on? You know, it doesn't have to be complicated. Break it down. Go back to that little kid who asked the questions, even when people said, why are you asking me so many questions? Right? Because everybody's always shutting that down when you're a kid. I still do it. I still ask the questions. If
Why?
you're not asking the questions, you're not getting enough answers, right? For yourself or what you need later or whatever. So pause and don't overcomplicate it. Just ask a few basic questions. Sorry, my hair is like got a mind of its own right now. This is the whole you can't touch your face thing.
The time.
I know. It's terrible. So yeah, so it's the awareness, it's the noticing it, and then it's the mindfulness and what you kind of start to do mentally and sometimes physically. But then that brings it to the next step, which is the action steps that you're going to be doing with this. So you're in this mindful moment. You've said, okay, what do I need to do here? You've started asking the questions. Now it becomes an activity. So now this is the craft project, if you will, where you're now going to maybe make a list. You know, you're going to, I mean, you could color for 5 minutes, you know, if that's what you need, right? But it starts with asking the question, what's going on? What do I need right now? Okay, I need 5 minutes of peace so I can reset and then figure out what's going on. Okay, so how do I get 5 minutes of peace? All right, 5 minutes of peace, I can go for a walk outside. It's going to move my body. That's going to get me into a different environment. That's going to check all the boxes, right? Okay, I can't go for a walk outside. All right, so I'm going to walk down into a different room and I'm going to sketch. I'm going to color. I'm going to read. I'm going to go to my favorite comedy. I can't think of the word, but the website.
Stand up. You're talking about stand up?
No, but that's fine too. But like, I'm going to take myself out of it. Yeah. But I'm going to take myself into a place where I need to recenter. So I'm going to do something I enjoy. You know, maybe it's like, maybe you're going on Pinterest, maybe you're on Instagram, maybe you're reading a book, maybe you're, you know, jotting some recipes down that you want to try, whatever it is. You know, maybe you pick up some knitting needles and you're, you know, I don't know. Maybe you're outside gardening for 5 seconds. Maybe you're watering your plant and just saying hello to your plant for a minute. But it's making the question, what do I need right now? And then the action step comes in 2 parts. The action step is part 1 is what's immediate? What am I going to do right now for this immediate situation? Because you have two things. You have this right now, I have to get through this situation. And you have what is going on underneath all of this stuff that I have to deal with. And that's a much bigger package to open up and explore. So you have to break it into two. You may not have time to unpack all that other stuff. You may just need to sit with it through the day. You may need to forget about it and come back to it later. But starting with that first one of saying, okay, I have this package right now, this little tiny, I need to get through the next 8 hours of my day and I don't know what's going on. I need to get through this next 60 minutes. I have this coming up at 12. I just need to get there, whatever it is, starting with that. And then just listing that out real quick. What do I need to do? And that can be as simple as a few different mantras that you throw out there to help you get through. It can be like, for example, this isn't going to make any difference in 5 years.
Yeah.
5 years from now, this moment isn't going to matter. I mean, my life is completely different 1 year ago than it was 1 year ago. So the things that are stressing you out now that you're worried about, it's not going to matter to you maybe even an hour from now, never mind 5 years from now. So just having like a go-to list of some things that you can kind of throw out there. Okay, this doesn't matter. Or you were going to say something?
Yep, but finish your thought and then I'll talk about list things. I had a little thing to add.
So just having those, those go-to things where you are not having to actively think about it because you're going to then put an action in place. Right at that moment, the action is doing those things that you know are good. So the larger action is unpacking it all later, but the first action is basically you're pulling it out of your pocket. This is the quick little pocket index of, I know that if I do this, this, and this, I'm going to get through the next hour. Go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, no, I just wanted to add to what you were saying about how to kind of teach your mind how to delineate between the things that you can control about what's happening and then the things that you just have to kind of cope with. So some of what you were describing were relaxation things and things to kind of, breathe some positive into what might be a stressful situation. So those are your coping strategies. So you might ask in that immediate, so for me with my rushed heavy schedule, if I'm asking myself, what do I need right now? I need to breathe because I'm, my body's reacting in a way that's, my heart's racing, all the things. I actually need to breathe. So there's an immediate action, like you said. And if it's hard to come by, what do I need? Ask yourself, what's the most loving thing I can do right now? So if you're under duress, something's out of whack, whether it's physical or emotional, spiritual, it doesn't matter. What's the most loving thing that I can do is going to just help sharpen your mind and point you in a quick, positive direction. And so for me, if I'm going to do that, I will take a breath and I will maybe have my client wait outside for 5 extra minutes just so that I can, regroup or whatnot. But you're right, it doesn't address the underlying imbalance that I have in my schedule. So when it comes time to once you get through that moment, you have time to sit and think about it. I would ask, what can I control about this situation? Those are going to be your actions. So for me, I could look at, how many people am I seeing in a day? Is that too many? How can I adjust my time? How can I add in more breaks, do more self-care, kind of build it in there? So those are like structural action stuff. But then there are things that I can't control. I'm a counselor. I'm dealing with people who come in stressed. So there's an inherent degree of stress in just what I'm doing every day. So those things that I can't control, that's going to be my coping strategies. How do I take those breaks? How do I take care of myself so that I'm not getting depleted with just the normal course of my day? That makes sense. So
yeah, no, absolutely.
Your brain can get involved with this if you just ask a few key questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like if you can find a way to even put these few key questions down somewhere, a note in your phone, something that you have a sticky note up somewhere, something that you can just go to and remind yourself until it gets to be something that you do naturally, and just remind yourself, okay, I want to ask this question, I want to do this thing. And sometimes, like, I have a sign that says just breathe. Because sometimes actually need a reminder to just breathe because you're going through it all and you're just like, what is going on? And like you said, you just need that reset. And through all of this, these are just ideas, examples, and a concept of how we go through all of this. Everybody does it in a different capacity. Everybody has different tools in their toolbox that they use to get through things. Everybody reacts emotionally a little bit different. So this is just a guideline, right? Because that's what we're doing here. We're trying to guide you to a way that's going to work for you. So you have to take the action step, you have to take the action step of controlling what it is that you need in your life and how you want to incorporate it in. So everything that we're giving you and all the things that we do, whether it's Living in Charge or Sacred Circles, or you were in one of our other retreats or anything like that, where every place that we come from is to give you as many ideas, as many options, as much love, and as many tools as we can, so that you can find what resonates with you. Because intuitively, you are going to do much different things than everybody else around you. Those things are not wrong because they're different. We have a thing in our society where we like things to be the same. I'm not one of those people that like things to be the same, but that's a standard that kind of comes around. They want, the societal standards of everything. We're not standard. Every one of us is unique. We're all going to see things differently, feel things differently. So this holds true for everything that we're doing. This process, as you go through, find what works for you. Make the list in the way that it works for you. And keep learning, keep discovering new things, because that's, again, we're on this whole journey, and this journey doesn't stop. So what I might do for myself right now is different than what I did 5 years ago. And I guarantee it's going to be different 5 years from now, because we have to do what works for us and continue to grow and learn as we're doing that, and modify that in. And there's a difference between a trauma reaction to something and a standard life reaction to something. And I don't know the clinical terminologies for all of this, but if you're having a trauma reaction to something, there's going to be a lot more to this and a lot more to package. And that's also something that you probably want to also be talking to a therapist about. Doesn't mean that this doesn't help. It's a small portion of it. It's a much bigger reaction. It's a much bigger deal for you emotionally, if it's a trauma response in some capacity. So being able to also separate those and how you're reacting to things, and know that everything comes in layers. There are things with myself that I will have what I can, consider to be just like a regular reaction to something. But then as I'm unpacking it, I'm realizing that those emotions and everything is amplified because of something else. Often it's because of a grief response that I didn't even realize was there. Because with grief comes so many other things, there's shock and all this other stuff that comes with it, shock and loss and everything else. And so that's part of this whole process where it's that unpacking. So when we're talking about the action steps, it's the baby action step to get through. And then all of these other ones are the larger action step. And that's where it might be 6 months, it might be a year, it might be forever to work through some of this stuff. But in that process, if you can find and apply these things and have some awareness to it and be mindful about it, and then put some action steps into place so that you can unpack it and explore it. If you look at your shadow as you're walking around with a flashlight, and you're doing this with the flashlight, and as you do this, that over there is going to be highlighted, but you go over here and over there is highlighted, and up here is highlighted. And if you hold it for a while, it gets brighter for a while, and then you can almost kind of start to see, when you go away from it, you almost can see what was over there a second ago, because your mind remembers what's there. So you start to process that a little bit more and you go back into it. But as you're going on this journey, that's what you're doing. You're flashing this light all over the place so that you can explore. So if you think of yourself as this cave that you're walking in, and all along the cave, I mean, you go like this on the side of a cave in some places, and it's absolutely gorgeous and incredible. It was dark and you didn't see it a second ago, but you went like that and you're like, oh my gosh, look at that. And you're looking around and you're really diving into it. All of those things that you think are shadowy and dark and scary, you can actually explore and open up and really get some incredible insight and value from, because now you've looked at that a different way, and you've treated that, instead of this dark shadowy place, as just something you didn't understand, and now it's in the light and you can see it and you can be excited about it and you can work through it. And so it's two different sides. It's the little bits of unpacking and it's a lot of bits. And what we're doing in Living in Charge for this whole year-long program and onward is unpacking the long term. It's the deeper, darker. It's so that you can sit with all of these things and explore and talk about them. And these are things we can talk about in the groups and stuff too when you're in there.
Yeah. And not all shadow work is, I wouldn't say it's not hard, but it, 'cause you, like you said, you can find beautiful things in there. The shadow is just things we're not recognizing. And you may be missing some of the more beautiful gifts that you have in yourself to not only offer you, but offer the world. But it's things that we might be afraid to open up to or to show. So while there's some fear in looking at it and maybe exploring it, the other side of that is a beautiful, just a beautiful expression of yourself. And your shadow here in the physical is like your support. So we come from light, and the shadow is like the kickstand that's backing you up. So anything that you're pursuing, whether it's a new goal or whatever, your shadow's there to kind of back you up, to teach you what you need to do in order to maintain that. So it's not the scary enemy, it's your backup. And when you're doing the shadow work, now you're facing that, you're in that cave, you're in the darker side. But when you're facing the shadow, the light always has your back. So there's this equal amount of support on either side, no matter which way you're facing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay. It's all okay.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of fun
all
to
okay.
learn.
Let's say that again, because I think that's such a, everybody, not everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but like it's common to just, want to fix everything, to come in and just want to fix all the things.
Yeah.
But some part of you that you think may be broken isn't broken at all. It's who you are. It's part of who you are. I actually shared something the other day that wasn't mine. I stole it from the internet. But it was about a disco ball. A disco ball is made up of a bunch of tiny pieces of broken glass on this one giant, gorgeous, glittery ball of light, right? And so that's what you are. You're a bunch of pieces of broken glass, and that total makes up this beautiful ball of light. We do so much focusing on the shadow and the dark and the broken and the pieces we want to fix. And while there's value to doing that, you want to train yourself almost, right? Because what you think and say, I mean, you believe, there's magic, there's power in that. There's an energetic vibration to all of the things you're thinking and saying. So if you're thinking and saying negative things all the time, or looking at yourself in a negative fashion, or thinking that something's broken, it needs to be fixed, you're right. So stop doing that. Just stop. You can explore, you can ask the questions, but do it in a loving manner, and do what you can to exaggerate and focus on all that is you in a loving, beautiful way. So if you find a part of you that's a little bit scary and you don't quite understand it, I challenge you to write down all of the good properties of that part of you. Write down a list of everything about that affects you or other people in a positive manner. Because I guarantee you it's there. You're just not looking at it that way. So flip it around. I like to flip the script often. It's a thing I do almost probably daily. But I like to flip the script and look at it in the complete opposite direction, because it forces you to see things differently. I'll go around with my camera, and I've done this since I was small, and encourage my kids to do it. I'll go around with the camera and I'll flip things upside down, turn it on its side, and I'll take pictures that way. It doesn't make any sense to take a picture of a mountain on the side, but if you do that, you see it differently and you look at things differently. It doesn't mean you post a picture on your wall of a sideways mountain, but maybe you do. Maybe there's something in there, right? That's amazing. But you have to get rid of the stuff that's holding you down. It's like weighted anchors, right? So all of those things that you've been doing that are making you feel like this, that are making you feel tired, like all of those things, those are weighted anchors, and they're habitual. You just keep doing them over and over and over again. And you may have never learned how not to do that. You may think that, okay, this is it. This is the way that life is, right? And maybe you want to believe that, that's your prerogative to do that. I don't advise it. I think that if you go through life in a manner that it encourages and what's the word I want to use? I'm getting downloads and I'm getting confused as it's coming out. Celebrate, I just want you to celebrate you and all of the parts of you, even the dark, shadowy, cave that you need the flashlight for. There's stuff in there that's awesome. If you've never done cave walking, like where you go in and explore and they have the stalactites and the stalagmites, I don't know which one is which, but and they have all of that. It's amazing. If you have not done it, go do it. And if for no other reason, to know that you have a cave like that. And there's all sorts
Cave
of
of Wonders.
a
Yes.
cave of wonder. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I'm off my pedestal for a minute. My
No,
soapbox.
it's fine. I guess I just want to address the fear factor, the
Mhm.
the weighted stuff that might hold you back.
Mhm.
Because again, even looking for something positive can be scary.
Yeah.
I want to be able to put myself out there as a speaker and an author, but that brings up a lot. So I'm getting triggered a lot by just going through that process. But things that you're afraid of, things like habits that form around fear, are all things that have been set up by you a long time ago to protect yourself. So these are not things that are inherently awful or mean. They just had a job to do, and you only knew what you knew at the time whenever you decided to pick up this habit. Usually we're young, like under 10, under 6, when we have our magical thinking and we think, oh, if I do A, B, and C, I can make the situation better. We have this illusion of being able to control things, to come back to control. Because in our early lives, it's too upsetting. It would be too earth-shattering to think we can't control things. So we go into magical thinking, and if people around us are stressed, if I jump up and down 10 times, I can make things better. Or so we just take on all this stuff to make the world seem understandable with limited information. So when we come out in the real world and we kind of grow up, those beliefs don't always help us. They did then, they worked. So any of these things that you're trying to change are not bad. They're just needing a different job. They need a different thing to do, another way to support you. So I don't want it to feel negative or punitive, because it's easy to do, right? It's easy, well, for me, Miss Negative over here, I will talk negatively about myself and put that down. But it's all cause and effect. You learned what you did your best decisions that you could make at the time, and then it builds on the next one until it creeps up into your awareness to make it different. And it will naturally creep up in there. So if you ask and look, I think you just catch it a little faster. But it's coming one way or another. It's coming. We cannot help but grow. So
That's true. I want to add, in terms of you mentioned, the little kid and you're jumping up and down and all of that, and and then we grew up and all. I want to add my encouragement to, leave behind all the adult things and go back to the kid things as much as possible, because I think that that's such a huge reason why people struggle. There's so much of your child, your inner child in there that was smushed down and needed to hide away, and is probably in that cave of wonder that we're talking about. That inner child doesn't want to be inner. That inner child wants to be out and doing things. And I'm not talking about, you're just going to go run and play and do all those things all the time. But if you are, that's awesome. I encourage it. But you have to allow that inner child out. We have this, impression that it's you're an adult, you can't behave that way and all those kind of things. But if you notice, as people get older, what do they start to do? They start to go back to those kid ways. They start to not care, and they let all this, I have to act a certain way stuff go away. And then they come back to that little kid and they're playing and they're doing all those things. My parents live in a community where they have, it's an over 55 community, and they have a club for everything on the planet. It's like the ultimate college dorm room, right? They do all of the things. They have sports and everything else. And they're out. What are they doing most of the time? They're playing. They dance on the street every night. They have music every night. They bring all that back. So when you start looking at like what's going on in your life, and you start like wondering where all the stress is coming from, start asking those questions. When did I stop playing? When did I stop dancing? And do those things, all those little kid. When did I stop questioning everything? Do those little kid things, and you'll notice this other stuff will start to be easier, because you'll start to have more fun with it. And those magical places that you go to as a kid to protect you, those are valid now. I go to magical places quite often, and it's, in some cases it's an escape, and in other cases it's an inspiration. But I live in those magical places, frequently, and it keeps me young, to do those kind of things. Now, I enjoy being in those magical places. I know not everybody actually likes that, but if you're somebody who has given up all of the things of your childhood, I would question that and say, why? What did what are you losing by giving all of that up? And what do you want? What do you miss? What do you want to have back? Maybe it's just playing card games, right? But it can be as simple as that. But go back and try to find that inner child and let that inner child out when you're going through these processes, because it'll help.
Because that's who's talking to you. When you get triggered like that, it is your inner child. So
Yep.
When you're asking yourself, what's the most loving thing that I can do, you're really trying to nurture that child. Maybe they need to play. Maybe they need a hug. Maybe they just need to scream and rant and have a tantrum.
Break some stuff.
Ice cubes in a bathtub, very good if you got one. If you like breaking things. You got to throw them a little hard to shatter them. So that's the fun part.
Yeah, silent rocks. Yeah, so in summation, you want to look at this in 3 parts. You want to have the awareness, start noticing, right? We talk about this a lot. It's important. Have awareness, notice what you're noticing. And then have those mindful moments. I mean, you should look at where you can in your day that you can put these mindful moments on a regular, but have a toolbox of these mindful moments for when you just need them, because you're in response to something else that's happening, right? Because that's what we're talking about today, is those unexpected coming at you emotions, those shadowy stuff that comes at you unexpectedly. That could be something as small as like, a frustration with they did my order incorrectly. Okay, well, why is that such a big deal? I'm upset about that right now. It's okay. It's gonna be okay. Here's a hug and a cookie. So having that mindfulness of where you can slow down, you can do some breathing and do that, ask some questions, and then those action steps that you're going to put into place for the immediate, and then putting that plan on the calendar for the bigger stuff. So immediately I'm going to do this, but tonight I'm going to, tomorrow I'm going to, this weekend I'm going to, this, and this. So just a couple of those like little basic action steps to get you through. Do you have anything that you want to add before we close it
Just
out?
a reminder that no matter what you're doing, whether in the shadow work or you're in the light side, you're always being supported. You cannot be without support, even if you can't see it directly in front of you energetically. There's always equal amounts of both. So if you're in the dark and it feels mucky and messy and you can't see the way out, in order to even have the dark, there has to be equal amounts of light available to you. So just kind of remember that. And don't be afraid to ask for support. That's what we're here for. You know, people in your circle, try to think about that as you're doing this work. Who can I kind of share this with, or what's my support team? It takes a village. We're not meant to do this work on our own.
Absolutely. Yeah. I thank you for hanging out with us. We appreciate you. We're here if you need us.